afternoon. It started raining in New York. News reports that the actress Connie has been exposed for having an affair and breaking up someone else's marriage. TMZ reports that Connie might be pregnant. Sources say that Waldorf Fair is about to divorce his wife Eliana and marry actress Connie. Strong alliances can't beat a 3-day fling. A look back at the marriage between Martin family's only daughter Eliana and Waldorf family's son Daniel. According to reports, early March, the Martin and Waldorf families are planning to dissolve their alliance. The videos on my phone were loud and chaotic, with titles growing more sensational by the minute. I closed my eyes in confusion, turned off my phone, and threw it aside. A phone in the living room rang at the most inopportune moment. I walked over and picked it up. It was my assistant, Elise, calling. "Hello, Eliana. I saw your phone was off, so I called the house phone instead." "What's up, Elise?" "Eliana, have you seen the photos Connie posted on Instagram?" I paused for a moment, then quickly opened Instagram as she suggested. What greeted me was a large expanse of pale yellow, and I immediately recognized it as the invasive species Berberis thunbergi. This plant is incredibly invasive, spreading rapidly, outcompeting other plants for sunlight and nutrients, causing them to die off, and posing a severe threat to biodiversity. It's already on the list of invasive species. This is the place we reported last time. The relevant departments were planning to remove it. But since Connie posted on Instagram, more and more people have gone there, and it severely obstructed our work. Also, there was a dispute there today. Some extreme fans believe that it's a spot their idol loves, so they don't want the invasive species removed. I looked closely at the few lines of text and 9 photos Connie posted. Here are some pictures from last November. He used to say that my smile is very bright, so I'm posting them here for him to see. When we were filming last year, we found a lot of these yellow flowers here. I took many of them home and even scattered some of their seeds along the way. Maybe next time when we visit, there will be even more flowers. I'm recommending it to my fans. Everyone, feel free to visit. Beth. At the time, someone was too busy to join me, but I hope next time he can come along. Below, a fan commented, "Is Connie in a relationship?" She replied with a cryptic emoji. Someone else commented, "Why is she posting pictures from last November in March this year?" She replied, "I wanted to show them to someone." I didn't say much more, gave a few other instructions, and ended the call. Later that evening, Daniel's cousin Riley called me. As soon as I picked up, she immediately spoke. "Eliana, I'm about to lose it. What is this nonsense? I really can't believe it. Can't Connie just have a little common sense? Her actions are directly making the department's job way harder. Doesn't she read the news? They just got rid of a large batch of them." I sighed. The main issue is that each plant can produce over 20 taro seeds. By the second year, a single plant can form a small patch, and she even deliberately scattered the seeds on the ground. My God, I'm going crazy writing this report in my study at home. I still have to go to a meeting later, and I can't even imagine how busy it's going to be. How could Daniel like someone like her? She has that smug look on her face. I really can't stand it. "Eliana, did you see the watch Connie's wearing? Isn't it that antique one Daniel bought at the auction?" I didn't respond to her, instead asking, "Riley, is Amy still behaving well at the Waldorf house? I've just wrapped up here and I'll be heading over soon." "The giant cake should be arriving shortly," the person in charge messaged Amy. "Okay, I'll have the butler keep an eye out for it. A banquet isn't until 8, right? I'm heading over now and can help with setting up the venue." "Eliana," she interrupted me, her voice lacking confidence. "Amy's birthday. Daniel still isn't coming home?" I paused for a moment, then let out a small laugh. "Yeah, he hasn't been involved in Amy's life for the past 2 years. He didn't want to be with her on her birthday, so why would he come back today? He's probably at some club with Jacob and the others." I'm speechless. I really am. That man, just a total jerk. All of them are. What kind of friends does Daniel have? One's getting a divorce today, another tomorrow. They all just hang out at the club every day. I couldn't quite put into words what I was feeling. Briley, there's something I need to tell you. I'm about to divorce Daniel. Eliana, I interrupted her. Don't try to talk me out of it. It's no use. You know, a person Daniel truly loves is his first love. Connie, we were just a political alliance. Now that Connie's back, he's not going to let go of her. I don't want to keep dragging this on with him. I'm really tired. I'll be single again, and he'll marry someone else. There's nothing wrong with that. I think he'd be happy to see it too. What about Amy? She's only 4. A wave of bitterness surged in my chest. The reason I didn't say anything before was because Amy's birthday was coming up, and I wanted her to have a happy time turning 4. There's a lot of business ties between our two families, and many things can't be easily separated. If the Waldorf couple is willing, Amy can stay with them often. I'll try to make sure her environment doesn't change too much. As for Daniel, maybe when we're divorced, if he's in a better mood, he might actually give her a bit of that scarce fatherly love. I hung up the phone and saw a few new messages on my phone. Some were from Daniel's first love, Connie, and another was from Jessica, a woman who looked like Connie and was the substitute Daniel had hired. I won the Newcomer Award. You should have heard about it by now, right? It should be all over the news. I don't believe you haven't seen it. Now I have the right to stand by Daniel's side. Are you still going to shamelessly cling to your marriage and hold on to him? As if to emphasize something, Connie sent 2 more messages. Do you know what's more destructive than first love? It's the first love that leaves and then comes back. You're just part of a political marriage. You only married Daniel because of your parents' status, because your family has money. You'll never compare to my position in his heart. I found it somewhat laughable. The year I married Daniel, Mrs. Waldorf had a conversation with me. She told me not to worry about Connie, that Daniel was just infatuated and didn't really like her. The reason she opposed Daniel being with Connie wasn't because of social status differences, but because they weren't right for each other. She said Connie was arrogant, disrespectful, and had ulterior motives. Daniel, on the other hand, was said to inherit the entire Waldorf family legacy and had a heavy responsibility. Over time, reality would wear away at their novelty. So, she believed that if they got together, it would end badly. It would just be a mistake. I always thought what she said made sense, but sometimes I wonder if it would have been better for them to just be together back then. So Daniel wouldn't always think of me as the one who ruined his love. I opened the message Jessica had sent. I had a son with Daniel. You can choose not to acknowledge me, but please acknowledge this child. He's only a little over 1 year old. If you take him now, he won't remember anything. I'm at Starbucks. Eliana, can you come meet me? This was even more ridiculous. I had no idea how she got my number. On my way to the Waldorf house, I hesitated for a moment but decided to follow the address on my phone to the CAF. Some people can never settle down. As soon as I walked in, I saw Jessica sitting there, holding a child in her arms. The child looked quite small. Jessica did resemble Connie a lot, enough to make me feel uncomfortable. Children's eyes are always the most beautiful, full of innocence. I sat across from Jessica and ordered a coffee. This child was born secretly, without Daniel knowing. You're wasting your time talking to me. You won't get anything from me, I said quickly, not wanting to engage with whatever she was saying. Eliana, you can help me. She took out a document from her bag and placed it in front of me. Just as I expected, it was a paternity test. You can make Daniel acknowledge this child. I looked up at her. She met my gaze without showing any signs of hesitation. She was much more cunning and clever than Connie. Whether you believe it or not, this is Daniel's child. I wouldn't joke about something like this. Here's the paternity test, which I had done after I brought the child back to the country. The samples were specially kept. If you still don't believe it, you can have it retested. No need. I glanced at the child. He did look very much like Daniel. But so what? It didn't affect me at all. Do you have anything else you want to say? If not, I'll be leaving. I stood up. Wait. She quickly stood up, holding the child. She lowered her voice. Eliana, don't you think the Waldorf family needs an heir to inherit their massive fortune? She stammered. No, that's not what I meant. What I'm saying is, the child is still small. You could take him and raise him as your own. If you do that, your position will be even more secure. I couldn't help but laugh. Raise him as my own child, Jessica? Do you think that's possible? Don't I have my own children? I asked sincerely. But she's a girl. What if, in the future, the Waldorf family doesn't want a girl to inherit the business? Eliana, you just need to give me some money, and I'll hand over the child to you. I won't bother you. I won't interfere with your life. I grabbed my bag from the table. You're ridiculous. I scoffed. Why should I give you any money? Are you overestimating yourself? Why should I take this child and undrace him for you? Just to leave a future threatened, let him covet the Waldorf family's wealth. Trying to take what belongs to my daughter. Don't be ridiculous. Jessica, you met Connie by accident. Listen to her. Up plastic surgery and changed your name. Trying to profit from Daniel, right? Is there anything in this world that can't be found out? Anything I can find out, Daniel can find out too. So after things blew up, you suffered a little, and then Daniel paid you off and sent you abroad, forbidding you from coming back. Am I off by even a little? She looked around, her expression stiff, holding the child in her arms as if unsure what to do. Why don't you go to Daniel? I stared her down. Because you're too scared. If he finds out you secretly had a child with him, your fate will be miserable. So, you came to find me. But did you think I'd be kind and magnanimous? I can assure you you're thinking too much. No matter how many children Daniel has outside, no matter who you go to in the Waldorf family, the only heir to the Waldorf family is my daughter. Just like how I'm the only heir to the Martin family. I added, if you don't believe me, you can ask Daniel yourself. See if the child in your arms can be used to manipulate him. I turned to leave and pay for my coffee, but Jessica called out to me, Eliana, don't rush off. Think about what I've said, okay? This child is really well behaved. If you spend some time with him, you'll definitely come to like him. You like Daniel, don't you? Why can't you accept his child and bring him into the Waldorf family? It's not like money is an issue for you. If necessary, I can even give up the money. I just want you to acknowledge this child. Would you like a child your husband had with a third party? I sneered. No need. Looking at him is a disservice to myself and to my daughter. Also, I can promise you no matter how talented your son is, no matter what luck he has in the future, he won't get a single penny from the Waldorf family. A car drove into the Waldorf estate and stopped. I grabbed my things and got out. Walking into the venue, I immediately spotted Amy sitting on a small sofa, wearing a princess dress, looking sweet and obedient. As soon as she saw me, she ran over and hugged me. You're finally here. I pinched her chubby cheek and looked her up and down. My baby, how are you so beautiful? I just can't get enough of you. I hadn't even said much when Amy's eyes turned red. I really miss you. Grandpa and Grandma are really nice to me, but I like you the most. I picked her up. Mom loves you the most too. I'm sorry, baby. I'll be less busy soon. How about you come stay with me for a while when that happens? She nodded obediently, and after a moment, she leaned in closer. I forgot to tell you, I like Daddy too, but not as much as I like you. Daddy's really busy. Amy hugged my neck. I haven't seen Daddy for a long time. I carried Amy into the room, and she continued. Every time I called Addie, he says he is in a meeting. Bella's daddy isn't that busy. Bella says her Addie is the best. He often takes her to the amusement park. Mommy, is Daddy really that busy? She asked. The question I had been trying to avoid. Every time it's my birthday, Grandpa, Grandma, Auntie, and lots of other uncles and aunts give me lots of presents. Daddy gives me lots of presents too. He bought me many jewelry necklaces. But Daddy never celebrates my birthday. Mommy, is Daddy really that busy? I stroked her head, feeling incredibly guilty. Children are much more sensitive than adults realize. Sometimes, when they ask questions tentatively, they've already been thinking about it for a long time. Tears welled up in Amy's eyes. I hugged her tightly and, for the first time, lied to her. Yes, sweetheart, Daddy is really busy. He runs many companies, and every day he has meetings and signs papers, so he doesn't have time to spend with you. I don't see him often either, I added quickly, fearing she might not believe me. Does Daddy not like me? How could he not like you, sweetie? And he loves you very much. Then why doesn't he ever spend my birthday with me? All the other kids have their parents with them to cut the cake. Actually, he did celebrate your first and second birthdays with you, but you were so small back then. You probably don't remember. Really? Really? I exaggerated my tone. Sweetheart, how could Daddy not love you? Why would you think that? Amy smiled happily, took some candy from her pocket, and said, Mommy, I love milk candies the most. Here, you can have my candy. I saved it for you for a long time. I smiled and accepted the candy she offered. But the truth is, I lied to her again. When she grows up, she'll know that on her 4th birthday, I lied to her twice. The first time was saying her father didn't spend time with her because he was busy. The second time was when I told her she was her father's only child. But, actually, Daniel and Jessica have a son. Fake is still fake. I can't cross the barrier of time. And someday, the truth will be uncovered. Looking at me pitifully, Mommy, can you tell Daddy to come and celebrate my birthday next year? The uncles and aunties will believe we're a happy family. I froze for a moment, a smile frozen on my face. After a while, I came to my senses and nodded naturally. I'll make sure Daddy comes to your birthday dinner, sweetheart. But those words would never come true, because once Amy's birthday is over, I'll be getting a divorce from Daniel. By then, the idea of being a family will be gone. I sent Amy back to the hall and went to the room to send Daniel a message. It's Amy's birthday tonight. Can you come back? She said you've never spent a birthday with her and she can remember. So can you come back? After about 10 minutes, Daniel didn't reply. I wasn't willing to give up and sent another message. Consider this me begging you. About 2 minutes later, Daniel replied, I'll have someone send me back soon. Sorry, I was on the computer for an international meeting and had my phone on airplane mode. I didn't believe his words, but at least he responded. I replied, be safe on the way. After a moment, I added, thank you for agreeing to come back. There was no reply from his side. I put down the phone and sighed in relief. Over the past 2 years, Daniel and I have maintained the most polite and distant way of interacting, barely staying in touch. He hadn't returned to our marital home in the past 2 years. We don't have a fixed schedule when visiting the Waldorf family. We don't see each other often. We just have a meal with the elderly Aunt Amy during holidays. It's only during these moments that we exchange a few words face to face. The existence of our marriage had long since lost any meaning. Divorce would be better. Actually, in the first 2 years after Amy was born, I did have some fantasies. At that time, when Amy turned 2, Daniel came back from Switzerland after finishing business, immediately buying a return ticket home. Due to a flight delay, he stayed at the airport for 10 hours, then spent another 10+ hours on the flight back. After he got home, he sat on the sofa, holding Amy and unwilling to let go, patiently comforting her. When he saw me looking at him, Daniel seemed a little nervous and showed me some antique jewelry he had bought at an auction. I don't know if you'll like it. Maybe I didn't do well enough, and what I bought may not be to your liking. You can't write telling me what you like, and we'll try to get along well. At that time, I naively thought I had warmed up to Daniel over 3 years and finally softened his stone-like heart. I believed everything was improving, but things never turn out as expected. In the third year after Connie left, the year everything was supposedly falling into place, Daniel met someone who looked about 50% like Connie. He became tortured and conflicted. I watched as he slowly and consciously fell deeper into his own struggles. From that moment, I began to lose hope little by little. He said he would forget, that he would live well with me and properly accompany Amy as she grew up. It was all a lie. He couldn't forget. He couldn't even lie to himself. I should have given up long ago. But, that time, I had lost all sense of reason and became caught up in the inexplicable struggle of, why did I lose to her? No matter what. I couldn't accept it. These thoughts were nothing more than self-torture. So, 6 months after Amy's 2nd birthday, I filed for divorce. It was a plain, uneventful afternoon when Daniel and I sat together for the first time in 6 months, eating calmly. Let's get a divorce, I said, staring at him, speaking without warning, giving him no time to prepare. He froze for a moment. His hand with the knife and fork paused, confusion all over his face. But he only looked up at me and didn't speak. You should know the reason, I said, having practiced this line in my head countless times. I want us to part on good terms, to divorce peacefully. I don't understand, he said. I don't understand why we divorced when everything's been like this between us all along. Yes, he said he didn't understand. How could he understand? He didn't know how I had been in love with him for years, secretly in love with him as my first crush. He didn't know how I struggled with my feelings as I married him, constantly telling myself that it wasn't an easy path to walk, yet uncontrollably stepped into this murky water. How could he understand all of this? The year I started middle school, the news about Daniel's parents' divorce was all over the place, talked about by everyone in New York. It was said that his father, Henry, had fallen in love with another woman. With the vast company and enormous wealth, Henry could easily walk away from everything, just to be with that woman. But the elders of the family adamantly opposed it. Later, his mother, Melissa, agreed to divorce. But Henry suddenly changed his mind, wanting to make Melissa leave with nothing, even though she was completely innocent. So, they remained at an impasse. 2 days later, Melissa died in a car accident, which made everything much easier. Henry immediately announced he would remarry. Then, that heavily made-up woman, carrying a newborn baby, walked into their home. Daniel was sent to New Zealand for school at a very young age and rarely came back. During the time his parents were going through their divorce, he had to stay in New Zealand due to passport issues and couldn't return home. It wasn't until everything had been decided that he came back and stayed in New York to continue his studies. Daniel and I became deskmates. He was always so quiet and melancholic, but he was academically excellent and always wore a pure white uniform, his face attracting everyone's attention. He was always so perfect, whether it was modeling competitions, physics contests, or international events. He was confident and free-spirited. At that time, he never showed a hurtful expression or intended to harm anyone. My parents had decided to have only one child, and I was their only hope. At the age when I wanted to do everything perfectly, when I unconsciously burdened myself with countless shackles and feared failure, I met Daniel. He always won so easily. On the school honor roll, we were always close, one ahead of the other. He was ahead, and I was behind. At that time, I wasn't without frustration. But when Daniel noticed my emotions, he would come up with all sorts of ways to start a conversation, trying to help me not take things too seriously. I always remembered the words he said. Eliana, you're really excellent. Truly, you're the most talented person I've ever met. Honestly, I'm only good at physics and math Olympiad. I'm not nearly as good as you in any other subjects. You're excellent in every subject and way better than me. I've just been lucky these times, but you'll definitely surpass me in the future. There's no greater praise than that. When I took my next exam and scored full marks in every subject, ranked first, Daniel looked at my biology exam paper, where I had scored full marks, and said in disbelief, "Are you planning to become a scientist?" I solemnly replied, "No, I want to become a botanist or biologist." I want to work in environmental and climate protection. During a study trip to Antarctica, Daniel stood in the ice and snow, listening to the lecture on global warming. He said, "Eliana, I really admire you. You can definitely achieve your dreams. We'll all be proud of you when you do." The young Daniel did all the good things a person at his age could do. He politely and gently refused love confessions from female classmates. He cheered on a female classmate who was often teased for her body. He stood up against gender discrimination in his free time. He volunteered at a nursing center. He perfectly embodied the term first love, hanging in the sky, glowing with light, calm and silent, with light in his eyes. He began to frequently appear in my diary. Every word, every sentence was filled with my hidden feelings until the last year of middle school, when Connie transferred to our school. Enthusiastic but somewhat clumsy, she always messed things up, and she stormed into Daniel's life. Soon after, Daniel seemed like a completely different person. He kept her by his side, mentioning her to everyone, and even challenged a boy from the next class because of her, skipping class, just to take her to celebrate her birthday, distancing himself from everyone, just to please Connie. Later, the two of them had a big fallout, and I heard that Henry slapped Daniel in the school office. Connie accepted money from the Waldorf family and still went abroad with Daniel. They covered all her tuition fees. Later, I went to Switzerland to study environmental science, and I heard they were doing well abroad. They were the perfect couple, and others couldn't help but envy them. That's when I started to intentionally, and seemingly unintentionally, avoid my family when they casually mentioned the arranged marriage they had set up for Daniel and me when we were young. I would interrupt their talks about the potential alliance. I locked up the diaries from those years, locking away all the memories from my youth. If nothing unexpected happened, this would be the best and final outcome. I turned on the air purifier in my room, watching the numbers flicker, then pulled out my phone to check social media and scrolled through Connie's Instagram. Later, who could have imagined that the Waldorf family's company would suddenly face a crisis? Daniel returned home in a mess, even more silent than before. Connie didn't come back with him. I heard she quickly climbed up the social ladder and found another rich second-generation heir at school. Daniel gave up the philosophy he had studied to please Connie and applied to a Canadian university to study business. And the crisis in their family? I asked my parents for help to solve it, just like last time. At that time, I naively thought that if someone like Eliana couldn't be good enough for Daniel, then who else could be? Family background, ability. How could I be worse than anyone else around him? But who could have guessed? I was so overconfident, so arrogantly self-assured, that I lost everything in the end. I shouldn't have. I should never have. I looked at the photos Connie posted in the comments from her followers, and suddenly found it a bit ironic. She was the third party who broke up someone else's family, but to the ignorant onlookers, she was seen as the kind, optimistic, and sunny person. Even though Daniel and I were the legal couple, in her eyes, I had become the unreasonable, shameless person clinging to Daniel. There were already many guests arriving, so I left my room and saw his grandmother, Helen, standing in the hall. Helen took my hand. "Eliana, you're here. Amy just told me she saw you, so I came to find you. I just got here a little while ago and spoke to Amy for a few minutes." I smiled as I spoke to Helen. Amy's still so young, but every year she has such an extravagant birthday party. Helen also smiled as she replied, "We throw Amy a big birthday party, so everyone can come to bless her. The kids love having ceremonies like this. More people will arrive soon. A driver is picking people up, and Amy invited all her classmates. The kids enjoy the lively atmosphere. By the way, where's your father?" Helen looked around. "Your parents just came in and said they were looking for you." I turned around and saw my parents walking toward me. I gave my mother a hug. "Dad, you're here." They smiled and replied, "Every year, my parents would come to the Waldorf family to celebrate Amy's birthday. Dad is 58 now. with a little gray at his temples. But he still looks very healthy and doesn't seem like someone almost 60. My mother looks even younger. Eliana. A familiar voice called, and I looked up. It was Elise. Eliana. She jogged over to me. I hurried a few steps toward her. It's so busy today. I thought you might not have time to come. She smiled as she grabbed my arm. Eliana. Of course we're coming. We're here to support Amy today. Riley is parking outside and will come in later. Sure enough. The next moment, Riley walked in with a look of grievance. This is just ridiculous. Eliana. Because of Connie. We had to have another meeting. She gave me a sympathetic look. Eliana. You're probably going to be even busier tomorrow. I heard there's a big meeting coming up. I helplessly nodded. You guessed it right. I just received an official notice in my room. Once this event is over, I'll probably be buried in databases and archives for the rest of the night. What do you need the archives for? Tomorrow we need to draft a report on pest control measures for Berberis and Bergie. I'll write the report tonight and pull an all-nighter. Luckily, it's seedling season, so it's not that hard to deal with. You can use glyphosate mixed with laundry powder in a 51 ratio for pest control. For prevention, you can use 80 glyphosate-soluble granules at 100 grams per acre or 30 glyphosate water solution at 500 milliliters per acre, diluted with 60 kilograms of water for spraying. Stop. Don't talk about work. My head hurts. I'll pull an all-nighter tonight. Riley half lay on the sofa. Just destroy me. Elise went to get a drink, while Riley popped a piece of candy into her mouth. It's all that person's fault. I really want to rip her apart. Why promote invasive species? Suddenly, she sat up straight, pulled me down beside her, and whispered, Eliana, are you really going to divorce Daniel? Eliana, are you really okay with that? Okay with it. There was no reluctance. At the time, when Daniel returned after finishing his studies, I followed my own career path, and things were going well. The topic of marriage between our families was once again brought up by the elders. But I didn't give in. My parents were more accommodating and didn't force me to make any decisions. My mother took my hand. I thought about it a lot, and some things are better left as they are. Your happiness is the most important. There are only a few families that are on par with the Martin family. The Astor family and the bankrupt Biddle family have already formed alliances, and Clark Sayre is going to marry Daniel's sister. By this count, the only suitable match is Daniel, but Daniel hasn't made his stance clear, and you don't seem too keen. So forget about it. Actually, the Waldorf family is very determined, but they know Daniel's personality. It was supposed to end there, but suddenly Daniel wanted to meet me. Sitting with him again felt like so many years had passed. He sat there, dressed all in black. No one in New York could match his influence at his age. Efficient. His approach to business was said to be reminiscent of his grandfather when he was young, as people in the industry would describe him. Of course, pleasantries were exchanged. Congratulations on achieving your dreams. Thank you. You've also managed the family business very successfully. As I spoke, he smiled, then fell silent for a while. His expression grew serious. He said, Eliana, how about we give it a try? This way, it's a win-win. We join forces, fulfill the wishes of our elders, and it'll also help our family businesses. Maybe the Waldorf family isn't doing as well as the Martin family, but that's only because the Waldorf family stagnated for so long. Now that I've officially taken charge. Why? At that time, I was filled with confusion. Daniel looked at me. I can't stand seeing you with another man. Being with those people, you're better off giving us a try. He sighed. Honestly, I'm not a good person, and many of my business methods are questionable, and many things just spiraled out of control. Daniel quickly returned, and Amy, with a face full of joy, eagerly pulled me on Daniel's hands, introducing us to everyone in school. I watched Daniel, who was usually so silent, smile and hold Amy as they walked toward the giant cake. I stood to the side. Honey, Just a symbolic cut later. Someone will come to cut the cake for everyone. She leaned in and kissed my face, smiling happily. I love you so much. The adults around us burst out laughing. I avoided looking at Daniel, not daring to meet his gaze. Finally, everything was over, and the guests started leaving. As the hustle and bustle faded, the already quiet Waldorf house felt even emptier. Amy was drowsy in Daniel's arms, and he carried her to her bedroom. I glanced at the message I had just received on my phone. It was from Connie. Isn't today your daughter's birthday? Do you know what Daniel was doing before he came here? He was at the club, drinking with his friends. Every one of them brought a girlfriend. I didn't reply. There was no point. I never took her seriously. When Daniel entered the room, I closed the door behind him. Daniel, let's get a divorce. Daniel didn't say anything. Are you thinking about Connie? But what's she thinking about? Your money. I suddenly wanted to hurt him with my words. It was almost laughable. Daniel used to hate Connie, despise her for abandoning and betraying him. But recently, he had been staring at her photos for long periods. Maybe, just like Connie herself said, Daniel couldn't forget her. But Daniel probably forgot that it was he who said, Eliana, let's give it a try. It started with him. Let's finish it. Let me do it. Daniel, I don't want to drag this on anymore. I won't divorce you, Daniel said, his voice firm. Amy needs a complete family. Don't use the child to manipulate me. Daniel looked up at me. I didn't mean it that way. Since he took control of the family business, his approach had become very harsh. I remember the first time I mentioned divorce. He refused as well. He said, Eliana, I heard your uncle might get a promotion in a couple of years. There are so many people eyeing him. You wouldn't want him to be distracted by some small matter, right? You've grown up under his watch, and as his family, your actions affect him too. Now, everything was settled, and I had nothing left to worry about. I took off the bracelet from my wrist, the family heirloom bracelet Helen had given me the year we got married. It's all over. Daniel, I once thought that with enough love, I could change someone who didn't love me and had feelings for someone else. I was so foolish. You're really heartless. Eliana, seeing Daniel sitting there like he had lost his soul, I actually felt a bit relieved. I still remembered that time when we had an argument, and he spoke to me with the most disdainful and cruel tone. I like being at the club. So what? So what? Is there anything at home that makes me want to be here? Eliana, we're just in a marriage of convenience. You know I didn't marry you because I loved you. So what right do you have to control me? Don't you think you haven't figured out your place? I can't forget Connie. So what? I don't care how many new relationships I have during this time. If Connie comes back, everyone else has to step aside. When he said that, did he ever think it would hurt me? He saw me cry at night. So now, what gives him the right to call me heartless? He didn't deserve to say that. Eliana, your family is happy. Everything goes smoothly for you. So maybe you don't know the impact a broken home can have on a child. Even now, he was trying to convince me. I laughed until tears filled my eyes. Daniel, I really didn't expect you to say something like that. Just because I have a happy family, does that mean I should waste my life on you? Hey, broken home? Didn't you cause all of this? I said, my voice calm but firm. Let's forget it. Daniel, don't talk about doing this for Amy. Do you think you're such a great father? Last year, when I was stuck overseas for work, I couldn't bear leaving Amy alone with just the nanny. So I called you to come stay with her. You promised so well back then, but didn't take any action. Amy was crying drowsily on the sofa, and by night, she developed a high fever. How dare you bring up our daughter? Daniel, do you even deserve to be a father? When Amy was in the hospital, sick to the point of almost dying, and I was holding her crying, where were you? Where did I eventually find you? In a high-end club, where you received a call from Connie late at night, brooded over it all night, and got drunk beyond belief. Daniel, think carefully about what you've done. Do you think there's anything left between us? Do you have the face to talk about Amy? Let's drop it, I said, giving him a bitter smile. Do you even deserve to, Daniel? For 2 years, I've brought up divorce countless times, and I don't know what you've been rejecting. We've reached the end. Isn't it better to just tear off the mask? The next time I saw Daniel was on the day we officially finalized our divorce. He looked utterly worn out. When he saw me, he stared at me with hoarse voice, struggling to speak. How could it be you? He had finally realized everything I had done for him. I walked over and sat across from him. Thank you for not being late, and for not refusing to come. Mr. Daniel, what did you just call me? Daniel seemed a bit stunned. It's just a title. Why does it matter? I picked up the divorce agreement, looking it over. Before taking the pen, I tend to be polite to strangers. I hope you can get used to it. If you don't, that's fine, because we likely won't have any more contact from now on. Eliana, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me that it was you who strongly advocated for your parents to help our family through tough times twice? Why didn't you tell me that you really liked me back then? So what do you want to say? I signed the document and put the pen down. Who else but me? But I thought after high school, it was Connie who wrote me a letter saying that all the past would be behind us, saying she believed I would succeed and repay all the hardships, and that she would always be there behind me. Daniel, looking crazed, tore up the divorce agreement I had just signed, scattering it all over the living room. Eliana, that's not divorce. Please, I'm begging you. Let's try again. Forget it. Stop making excuses. Daniel, is it just because of that letter? How many times did you go crazy for her? Haven't you figured out your feelings for her? I chuckled lightly. Daniel, ask some dignity. It's all over. All the diaries related to you have been burned. What's left between us is nothing but shame. A rotten first love wasn't even worth preserving. It would be better to preserve him in formaldehyde at his most perfect moment. It should have ended long ago. Timeless's extra the next time Daniel met Connie was after the divorce. In the days that followed, he felt like he was living in a haze, as if every day was worse than the last. He looked at Connie, kneeling in front of him, begging for forgiveness and a fresh start, and couldn't help but feel utterly ridiculous. Do you remember the cliff we went to together? If you jump, I'll forgive you. He watched as Connie's face turned pale, sneering coldly. I'm not joking. Death with no remains. That's the simplest way. Otherwise, I have 1,000 ways to torment you. You don't want to, do you? I'll have someone take you. After someone took Connie away, Daniel made another call. I've sent you the photos. Jessica and the child. I want them checked. There's no record of them. A person on the other end of the line stammered. Daniel, this the child He was slightly impatient. I only have Amy as my child. Do you have any other questions? The person on the other end stammered and agreed. Daniel flipped his phone face down on the table. He didn't like dragging things out or leaving any loose ends. All he needed was an heir. That heir could only be his daughter. He would pave the way for her future. Daniel looked up at the ceiling and suddenly felt a sense of relief for cutting ties with his wife and daughter. That way, the bad things wouldn't be connected to them anymore. He would take care of all the bad things. Every time Daniel secretly watched Eliana and his daughter, he felt a strong urge to rush over to them. But he held back. He thought to himself, he was too dirty. He shouldn't show up in front of his ex-wife, or hold his daughter anymore. He was too tainted, and they were pure. There was always a stack of documents to sign in the office. Every minute, the company's accounts grew with more money. The Clark family, the Waldorf family, and the Martin family, the 3 biggest families in New York. A surname sometimes represented so much. Daniel would always remember that day. Before his wedding, his good brothers spontaneously threw him a bachelor party. During the party, someone teased him. Nice. Daniel, you really are a hidden gem. Who would have thought Eliana would marry you? That's really in our circle. Eliana is at the top of the pyramid, the only daughter of a top-tier family. Yeah. Daniel, I bet she's just after your face. Don't be jealous. If you could look like Daniel, let's see if anyone would want to marry you. Daniel, you don't know how powerful Mr. Martin is. But Eliana's second uncle is even more powerful. You know, Eliana's got a good life. Daniel, you really climbed high with this one. Everyone continued, one after another, never quiet. He casually glanced at the crowd. How come I never knew you all were such chatterboxes? Someone stepped in to mediate. You guys are just jealous. It's as if you're making Daniel sound like he's worthless. Daniel's family has been in business for 5 generations, with a legacy built up over the years. How could we be worse than the Martin family if it weren't for the past? Someone quickly nudged the person talking. What are you saying? Put it out. That person quickly shut up. Daniel glanced at them, not angry. Actually, he understood what the person had meant. If his parents hadn't reached that point, if his father hadn't cheated, if they hadn't split up, the Waldorf family would have long surpassed all other families. Now, his grandparents were stepping in to manage the family business, holding things together. But what about after they were gone? Would he always have someone to rely on? No, he wasn't that lucky. He had to work 1,000 times harder than these friends to support the vast family business. He loved winning too much. He would never let himself lose. But in the business world, without the connections from the previous generation, there were many relationships that were difficult to navigate. If the Waldorf family had formed an alliance with the Martin family, he didn't dare imagine what a giant leap that would be. At least it would secure the Waldorf family's glory for another 100 years. But there was something he couldn't quite understand. How could Eliana have agreed to marry him? Why did she say yes? Why was she willing to marry him? Was it only because he was better than those second-generation heirs in New York? Was it only because the two families had a long-standing relationship? He was a young talent, successful at a young age, no doubt. But looking around New York, there were many impressive people, and even more with potential. So why had she chosen him? He took a sip of red wine, feeling a sense of fondness for Eliana in his heart. Later, he got married and had a daughter. One time, he went out for socializing and didn't come home until very late. At that time, Eliana waited up for him until the middle of the night and made him some hangover soup. His wife, dressed in a cotton white nightgown, with an aura of intellectual charm, bent down to ask him, "Feeling better?" He groggily lifted his head and, to his surprise, saw nothing but tenderness and love in her eyes. For the first time, he panicked. Did she like him? How could someone as good as Eliana like him? When did she start liking him? He took her hand. "I'm good now. No need for more." He suddenly made up his mind to spend his life with Eliana, to get along well. He promised himself he would never disappoint her again. But how did things turn out like this? How did it come to this point? Later, his brother-in-law cheated, and his sister Tiffany divorced him. Tiffany, 6 or 7 years younger than him, stood in front of him. "Daniel, when you cheated, did you ever think that one day your sister might also be cheated on?" He stood frozen, listening as Tiffany continued. "Every time I realize you're my brother, I feel especially sorry for Eliana. Do you think you're so cool? Daniel, when you're out living it up, did you ever think about Eliana? I still have a brother. I still have you backing me up. But what about Eliana? Because she doesn't have a brother, no one to stand up for her. You think it's okay to treat her so badly. You know how Mom died. When did you become just like Dad? When did you become the person you hated the most?" Daniel clutched his stomach and collapsed to the ground. The past was unbearable, and just thinking about it filled him with regret. His secretary rushed in and quickly called for an ambulance. He thought it was all his own fault. He had brought himself to this point. No one else to blame. He lay there on the floor, hearing the ambulance getting closer, when suddenly everything went dark. His stomach had never hurt like this before. When Eliana received the news of Daniel's death, she was stunned for a moment. Advanced stomach cancer, voluntarily refusing treatment. The will was very simple. What shocked her was that Daniel left all of his assets to her and included a letter. Eliana hesitated for a long time before opening it. It contained only a short sentence: "It's my fault. Don't think the money is dirty, it's cleaner than I am." She didn't cry and continued living her life as usual. She had already let go of the relationship when she chose to walk away. When she stood by the window and looked out at the pouring rain,